It's the end of the world as we know it. It's the I no, I shouldn't sing. I shouldn't sing on a podcast. That's just gonna
You always tell me that I'm not allowed to sing, so
yeah, and I think I've proven why in a matter of 2 seconds. Uh, welcome, athletes. It's in orbit every Wednesday, and this week we are talking the end of the world, like we promised.
Again.
Again, like we promised last week, we are talking about John Wagner, Alan Grant, and Mick McMahon's The Last American.
Yeah, see, I was like, we have to get some levity out of the way and make this the happy part because, oh boy, the rest will not be.
It's a challenge. It's a challenge. This is in orbit every Wednesday, athletes.
Get 2000 AD now. Get.
Borathung Earthlets, welcome to the latest episode of In Orbit every Wednesday. I am your host, Molch-R, and this is your host, KLO-E. And if you've not listened to last week's episode, then please do, because we have a good old chat that starts off with wondering why John Wagner has not been inducted into the Eisner's Hall of Fame, considering he is one of the greatest combat creators of all time. And we had a good old chat about the comedy in John's work. Now, to balance that out, this week we're going to talk about The Last American, which did not appear in 2000 AD, but was it's Marvel Epics imprint in the late 80s. Marks something of a watershed. Not just for Marvel's Epic line, which eventually came to a halt, but also it represents the end of the John Wagner and Alan Grant writing partnership.
What a
Which
period to the end of that sentence, though.
oh yes, well
You know,
absolutely incredible. It was the kind of not the breakdown because that makes it sound acrimonious, but John, John has discussed previously that clearly they were starting to diverge in the kind of stories they wanted to tell and the way that they wanted to tell them. And that had begun with the Judge Dredd epic Oz, where they couldn't quite agree on the fate of Chopper at the end of that. And The Last American really is one of the last things that they wrote together. It also marks for me the high point of Mick McMahon's well, the high point of this phase of his artistic journey.
yes.
So, if you had been growing up reading Mick's work on Slain and Judge Dredd in 2000 AD, this probably was something of a shock,
Yeah.
even though it is an evolution of his work. But for those of you who have not read Last American, it is available in a paperback edition from Rebellion and is also available to read on the 2000 AD app. So I do recommend. I mean, just for reading it more than anything, right? Not just for listening to this episode. But it is the story of Ulysses Pilgrim, who and there will be spoilers over the course
Yes.
of this discussion, which is why
Kinda
you should
have
read
to.
it. And Pilgrim wakes up in a deep cryo containment facility deep under the earth, and he has been charged with basically surviving a nuclear war. So this is the late 90s, sorry, the late 80s. It's the point at which, unbeknownst to an awful lot of people in the West, the Soviet Union is about to collapse. But there was still a lot of rhetoric uh, in the Thatcher and Reagan administrations. So real kind of, it's darkest just before the dawn kind of historical moment. And So he comes out of cryo sleep. His three companions are AI. They are three sentient robots, two kind of heavy brutes charged with protecting him, and one which is there to basically try and manage his health during his mission. And he then goes out into the atomic blasted wasteland that was America, looking for well, I mean, his mission is, where there is chaos, bring order.
Mhm.
Find a way to for America to survive, to win
Yeah.
this what the unwinnable war. Um, Now, we've both gone through it to refresh our memories before recording this episode, and it's it's a challenging read at this point in history, wouldn't you say, Chloe?
It's it's more than challenging. I reread all of it in a oneer yesterday, and it made me cry. It
Mm,
actually made me cry, and I'm not saying that to try and be dramatic about it. Like, it's, it's a particularly hard read right now, not because, it does anything, like, hyper or directly political, but because it is so heavy with the emotion of the same kind of stuff that we're having to deal with right now.
mm,
And this crossover, at least for me, where the concept of sadness and loneliness and the concept of hope
mm,
are both products of each other in a way that's just like right through the chest. But it wrecked me for
mm,
a little while afterwards. And yeah, it's an intense read. I haven't read it for a couple of years. It's been sitting on one of my shelves, and every once in a while I'll pick it up, but fully reading through it is hard.
mm, mm. And considering that this was um, an imprint of Marvel.
Mhm.
Now, the epic line was something different. It was much more attempting to capitalize on the boom of that was sparked by Watchmen. Let's be brutally honest about it.
Mhm.
Um, of auteur-led, um, creator-owned stories.
Yes.
So different to what Marvel was publishing, but trying to find DC had some sort of stolen a bit of the march on these kind of mature
Mhm.
stories, thanks to its association with Alan Moore and people like that. Um, so this was a bit of an experiment, and I can't think of a more un-American
Yeah, it's
story than the Last American. And I'm not going to say it's uniquely British, because it's not. Because ultimately, John Wagner is, as we discussed last week, an American Scottish writer.
yes, it's complicated.
It's complicated, um, but I think it is kind of like the pure distillation, the inevitable endpoint of that Scottishness that we talked about in his work,
I
of deep pathos, of sadness, of grief, but also mixed in with a kind of challenging, mischievous, almost anarchism.
Yeah, I would also say, like, I do read the very British influence on
Mm,
this
yeah.
very American story because, um, as we've kind of talked before with a lot of apocalyptic stuff, there's the cozy apocalypse sort of
Mm,
thing, cozy catastrophe, and I almost get a more cynical version of that with this,
mm,
in so much that, you know, the world has, for all intents and purposes, ended. Everything is in chaos. There is one person left charged with trying to create a new, better world, and everything is grim. He's able to recognize the grimness of this, but it's the "you have to carry on" sort of thing, and there has to be some levity, and there has to be, like, there has to be this hope that it will get better, even though it is marked and proven that it will not,
Mm.
you know? So it does kinda have that same feel in my
Yeah,
mind.
I hesitate to say this, but this is John and Alan's Rogue Trooper. You've got a
Yeah.
guy on his own, and you need, in order to have somebody to talk to, you've got 3 robotic, well, digital, personalities that travel with him, while Rogue Trooper's, mission is one of revenge,
Mhm.
and, he exists in a world, that is full of people. He is alone.
Yeah.
There's
There is
no there's no happy ending after the revenge. It's not the Count of Monte Cristo. He's not gonna get everything that
yeah.
he wants. Um, you know,
The the robots in particular for me, reading through this and because we've been reading so many, Wagner and Grant stories,
mm,
lately, I noticed that the robots always serve a very particular purpose, and I think they do it even more so in this story, which is both John and Alan love to create these grim, nihilistic stories, but robots will always serve the purpose of levity. Like, because and I was like, "Oh, it's because they don't have to deal with the feelings of
mm,
it. They
mm.
don't, they don't have to have feelings around it." So, using them as this little kind of side character prop to add in the comedy beats or the moments of, just is kind of a genius move, really, because it does leave the main human character or to expand on the emotion. Like, they do get to, so the big emotions are still the focus because there are these little guys that are adding, you know, no feeling all, like, you get what I'm trying to say.
Oh, yeah, no, 100%, because that's the case in their, Judge Dredd work as well, and it's
Yeah,
something that John has
exactly.
continued with his solo Dredd work, where when you get a robot and, the robots in Mega City 1 are sentient enough to be able to, understand their predicament as essentially a slave class of
Mhm.
laborer, but they are not permitted to do anything about it. And so that produces this almost kind of working class resignation, this
Yeah.
comedic resignation to them. And you see that all the way through, whether it's a law master that's talking, or whether it's like a road worker, a droid or something like that. And the robot, all the way through, John and Alan's work in particular, the robot is the voice of the little guy
Mhm.
who can't affect what's happening really, but has this resigned, um, humor, this dark humor.
Yeah. Well, and you
Um,
end up and one of the best parts is regardless of the story, but and again, particularly in this one, I feel that you as the reader, but you can tell that the character that does have to exist in this world are grateful for it,
mm,
sort of thing. It's the somebody who some robot who kind of is resigned to that fate, and they don't know anything outside of what they have been programmed to do. Like,
mm,
my favorite one of my favorite parts of this book is Charlie, which is the little droid who's kind of in charge of Ulysses's, mental health and well-being. Um, and all the 20 years that Ulysses has been out, all Charlie has been doing is watching, pre-war TV
mm,
and, like, cartoonish propaganda and things like that, and so, like, his way of adding levity, but also in a way kind of processing through what's happening in the way that he's been made to process is, like, singing old commercials, talking about duck and cover,
mm.
all these things as if it's just something that happens, as in, like, because it doesn't affect him, you know? And but even when Ulysses kind of is also resigned to his fate, he in himself kind of drops into that headspace of realizing that he truly is the last person
Mm.
alive and feeling the weight of that and feeling like he doesn't deserve that. Um, you know, the Charlie says, "Oh, I've been doing all this because when you were inevitably going to be in a suicidal headspace, we had to, find some way to pull you out of that so that you can continue doing what you're doing."
Oh,
Like,
hang on. You glitched, and you said the last thing you said was, "We need some way to pull you out of the headspace,"
okay,
and then you went silent.
okay. Um,
Sorry.
oh boy. Yeah, he he's programmed to try and pull him out of this suicidal headspace just so that he can continue what he's doing even though it's this fatalistic task.
Mm.
And it's it's so grim, but it's something that absolutely resonates throughout all so many different parts of
Yeah.
history and particularly now. Like,
There's also and this is very much a Wagner thing of the emptiness of culture
mhm,
in the face of reality, and that's something that goes all the way through, all the way through his Dread work, everything else is Charlie is repeating these sayings, not actually understanding them, and
yeah,
in context of the end of the world, all these things are meaningless because they're dislocated from the source. So, it's a way of attempting, as you say, to give Pilgrim something to grab onto,
yeah,
but in doing so, he realizes it's just smoke, like it's meaningless. It's no different to the empty tins of food that they find down in the caves.
mhm,
You know, at the end, it's all just empty and meaningless. Like I said, it's a trick that John pulls quite regularly, and is at the heart of his Judge Dredd. This notion of that culture is meaningless and a frippery and silly and pointless, but within that, he makes quite profound comment about what the human response to totality,
yeah,
whether it's the totality of the end of the world or whether it's totalitarianism, or
mhm.
it's just a beautiful contrast.
Well, it's funny too because, like, the purpose of that being that, you know, culture is kind of empty. It's something that we get to ingest. It influences us, all of this, but ultimately is an empty thing, and I wholeheartily disagree with that.
Mm,
In my
mm,
in my reading of this, I'm like, "That's a great message, and that's exactly what's being kind of put upon the message that's being put upon with it," but it works.
mm, mm,
Ulysses does continue to try and live and search and is not going to stop, even though, like, culture might not be like this echo, this ghost of culture might not be enough for him to feel human, but it's enough to make him keep going anyway.
mm.
So it might be an empty gesture, but it's an empty gesture that works. So what does that actually say about
And certainly in the last, what was effectively the last issue or so of the miniseries,
Mhm.
um, you have them going down into the caves, searching for the women who were part of what is effectively scientific testing,
Yeah.
and it's not that in of itself is not easy reading, but
Yeah.
but they too were treated as something to be kind of squirreled away under the ground to try and but not
Mhm.
looked after properly. There's I know you want to talk about certain aspects of the characterization there as well. Um, and there's the empty gestures of calling the child hope.
Yeah.
And it's like, well,
That's
that's meaningless in this situation. Um, but it is the hunt for that
it is
that saves
like
him.
I wrote actually my notes for those who are watching. I just wrote down Melinda's story. Fuck. Like because you like when they go down into the caves they find the letter written by one of the women who is part
Mm,
of the experimental group. Her name's Melinda, and she has written this letter. It's scrawled out. A lot of things are misspelled, things like that. And she makes it it's I find it really interesting that Alan and John chose specifically to make these women autistic
mm,
because they actually say that in the letter. That they are a group of autistic women. And on the one hand, I'm like, interesting choice. Um, my reading it now, I choose to interpret that a little bit differently, which
mm,
is to say that like perhaps it's more I choose to look at it, I guess, more as a symbol of, like, choosing vulnerable women, like, purposefully choosing vulnerable women, people who have been put in this situation that that is inescapable for them, and again, it's somebody trying to make the best of what they can. Her naming the child Hope. And one of the doctors telling her the part that kind of went "Kuh," for me was like, the doctors say that there is no hope. We're at the twilight of the world. And so instead I changed her name to Twilight. And that fuck. Like but it's all of that whole portion of the story rips my heart out. And I think that it's kind of the exclamation point of the entire book, that everything that Ulysses has been going up to, it's like there was somebody else who also had hope,
mm.
and there was somebody else who accepted this grim, like, fatalistic, lugubrious fate that's set before them, and they still tried. Um, it's
Well,
just
for me, that creative choice is an expression of how little value the state puts on human life.
yeah.
In that it chooses those, and I'm putting this in big bunny ears for those who aren't watching, disposable people.
Yes.
Pilgrim is a criminal.
Yes.
They take him out of prison, because they're giving him, no sane man would take this choice. So we're going to go with the lowest of the low. And it's the same with those women as well. We're just going to take people who are utterly
Yeah.
disposable. And for me, the message around hope, it's so easy to be um, facile and twee about concepts like hope, particularly when things seem overwhelming.
Yeah.
Um, but what John and Alan are talking about is what there's a writer called Patrick Blanchfield, who wrote about the death
Mhm.
drive nation that um, particularly America, because he was writing about America, but you could say that of any of the great superpowers, um, including Britain, is this actually they're heading they're running headlong into death,
Mhm.
not because of actual any ideology, but because of a lack of imagination, a lack of hope, a lack of um, the idea that there is anything but death. The nihilism of the Last American is the politicians who led P- uh, Pilgrim into that deep cave to survive, that led those women down into that research facility, who killed the world. There's that wonderful moment in Mad Max Fury Road where when the war boys are trying to get onto the the rig, um, and one of the I think it's Nicholas Holt's character says something like, "It wasn't our fault,"
Yeah.
and one of the women says, "Then who killed the world?" And so for me, the Last American is about hope, but it's about truth. It's about recognizing and rejecting the death drive, the the
Yeah.
the psychological fatalism that, oh well, there's the bit at the beginning where basically there's been a truce, and the truce runs out in 48 hours, and we're already talking about a preemptive strike. Like, well, why?
Yeah.
Why have
Yeah.
you accepted that this has to be the way that things are? And for me, that's always been John and Alan's notion of hope, is just going, why? Explain why things have to be the way that they are. And
Yeah.
that's so much of for me, the satire and the politics in Dread is just it doesn't have to be this way. Why is it this way? So when Fargo says, it wasn't meant to be forever in Origins,
Mhm.
that's Wagner going, look how they don't even know what the point was.
Yeah.
It was just this death drive, like hanging on by your absolute nails, you know?
Yeah. It's asking for, well, it's asking the question, like, why? Why? It is like, it is that death drive, and it's also, it feels like the acceptance that you, or that being forced to accept that
Mm,
you will never really get an answer.
mm,
That nobody's ever really going to take the accountability
yeah.
for answering why. And that is both fatalistic, nihilistic, and in its own bizarre brand, very hopeful, because
It's liberating.
you have to keep doing this thing. You have to
Yeah.
keep asking why, despite the fact that you're never going to get that answer. It's
There's 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 that incredible dream sequence where he goes to heaven, and
Mhm.
it's full of all the presidents.
Yeah,
And of course,
it's
and the framing of his life is that he was born when JFK, the day that JFK was shot.
mhm.
Um, and heaven is full of these presidents. And um, my tablet is now refusing to actually deliver up the page to me. But the whole
They're,
thing about it is that, look at these incredibly powerful men.
but they're
What did they
just
do with
men.
it? They're just men.
And it's a line that he says too. He's like, "All of these people are, these are, these are all people who are responsible for what has happened, and like leading down this garden path of woe that
Yeah.
has been bestowed upon the world." And again, it's asking why, because
Mhm.
these are just men like any other man.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, I finally found the page. The place was full of presidents. In their time, the most powerful men on earth, elected to bring the greatest good to the greatest number. The arsenal of democracy with the vast resources of the land of the free to back them up in their mission. So where did it all go wrong? And they just go, atomic weapons have changed everything except the way people think.
Yeah,
You know, um,
it's fucking grim.
it's grim, but it's great because, like I say, it forces you to ask that question: where did it all go wrong? When it went wrong with those men?
Yeah.
Because just because they are the most powerful, it doesn't stop them being venal and vain and vainglorious and egotistical and arrogant. Um, and the it's yeah, it's just great. I mean, we've been talking now for the best part of half an hour about John and Alan, and I do want to bring it round to talking about Mick, because The Last American wouldn't work if it wasn't Mick McMahon.
It's true. Do you want to know something that I noticed, because I'm a big art nerd? I uh looking through this again, I mean, it's so, first of all, I highly recommend people actually get the print edition of it, because
Mm,
the printing is beautiful and the colors are so rich and just, it's incredible. But uh one thing that I noticed about this new dawning, I guess, of McMahon's evolution in his art, it's very if Egon Schiele had a cubist period.
Yeah, yeah,
If
yeah.
Klimt or Schiele had, like, a
Mm.
cubist period, like, it's all the proportions are all just a little bit off. All of the detailing on faces and hands are all over exaggerated. It's like, oh, my heart, though. My
I
heart
mean,
says
it is worth pointing out that it's not in the introduction to this version. I think it might be so because it's created around it's been bought out by different companies before. I
mm,
think ComX, which was a publisher in the 2000s, bought out a collection. I don't know whether that introduction was in that collection,
mm-mm.
but Mick has talked previously about how The Last American basically drove him mad because he started off using these Coptic markers to lay the different, effectively painting with markers,
Yeah.
and it was just taking him forever. And you can see in those initial pages, you almost like I remember as a school child, um, kids in my class would do posters for a project, and all the blocks of color would just be like a narrow tipped felt tip pen, just
Mhm.
in these lines of blurs, and you could see where it had overlapped, and so the color was
Yeah.
darker and richer. And you can see that in this printing of Mick's work. But that in of itself brings with it this intensity of color and he has this remarkable color sense as well, where
Oh, yeah.
he's playing in a subdued palette, but it's still incredibly vivid.
I was gonna say subdued feels like a misnomer,
Yeah,
honestly,
well,
because 'cause the colors themselves, they are for the most part they're a little bit muddy, they are a little bit subdued, but, like,
mhm.
they're so intense.
Yeah,
They're
yeah,
so intense. So it's I don't know, it's but you know what? That actually works beautifully with the story that they're telling because
mm,
it's the same thing. It's these contrasting things that have to exist.
yeah,
It's brightness and muddy darkness at the same time. It's
yeah.
it's very effective.
It's incredibly effective, and because this is effectively the point when he enters into an abstract,
Mhm.
kind of, how to describe it, an abstract expressionistic cubism,
Yes.
or if one wants to put him in a box, at this point, which, then continues to evolve until you end up with Howler, which was the Judge Dredd magazine story he did
Yes.
in about
Oh, my
94,
favorite.
95, I think, where I think there was like a 2-year long argument in the letters page of the Judge Dredd magazine about Howler because certain people's idea of what Mick should have been was grounded in 15 years before on Judge Dredd. And if there is an artist that has never stopped evolving in British comics, it's Mick McMahon.
Even now,
Even now,
you know?
yeah. So I can understand that some people, we all we all want more of what we loved. It's one of it's the nature of nostalgia. But he's never accepted that, and
Yes, but nostalgia is the killer of evolution and joy.
exactly,
So,
exactly,
you know.
and you just get that it's the kind of full page where it says the last American, and the episode is Goodnight Poughkeepsie,
Yeah. Mm.
and it is this mass tangle of petrified wood rendered in purples. It's the sickly yellow of the lights from the bunker. It's the blood red sky, and it's incredible. Like just in a single image, you go, "Well, this is hell.
Yeah.
This man is walking out into hell." Um, and I think any other artist would have attempted to bring some element of realism to it in possibly a mistaken belief that that would have heightened the horror and the pathos and the sense of place. But because Mick is in this abstract space as an artist, that makes it more horrific, 100 times more
It
horrific
does
because
make it
it's an
more
alien world.
horrific.
You what?
It does make it more horrific
Yeah,
because
yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
if this had been rendered with any sort of realism, it would almost seem, what am I thinking of? It would almost seem like a joke.
Yeah.
Like, it
Yeah.
wouldn't it
Yeah.
wouldn't have this haunting here's the page for those watching.
Mm,
The, but it does give this, it makes it all the more grim. I think I don't know if I'd be able to take this story, um, as seriously on, like an emotional level reading it and, like, without that abstractness because the story in itself and the nature of politics and government and chaos is all in itself very abstract and
mm,
intense. And so it just feels like the perfect mirror of it. It's this overdone, overexpressive, like cherry on top
mm.
of the sentiment that's being put through in the writing.
Yeah, yeah. And it I think it also adds to it, um, that this was a difficult time for all the creators.
Yes,
The birth of The Last American was very painful for them all for various reasons. Um, and yet what has emerged is not that necessarily a work of art can be considered perfect, but it is a distillation of the previous 10 years of them all working together in various ways, particularly John and Alan. Um, and Mick's artwork, for my money,
it's
the fact that
perfect.
it's
Sorry,
perfect.
I'll say it.
Yeah, the fact that this isn't now. Bear in mind, this was published around about the same time that Bisley was working on The Horned God
Yeah,
for 2000 AD. That Sienkiewicz was really in his prime in terms of what he was doing with for Marvel. Um, this deserves to be considered alongside those.
absolutely.
The only difference is this didn't have necessarily a lasting effect be- because you can't copy Mick McMahon's work.
No.
Lots of people integrate. I'm obvious people like Henry Flint, Jake Lynch, Rufus Dayglow. There's elements of his
Sure.
work in there, but they can't do Mick McMahon.
Well, that's, like, there with especially with people like Henry Flint,
Mm,
you can get, people that obviously have been influenced
mm,
by, like, him as an artist.
yeah,
But I wouldn't say that Flint is by any way trying to recreate McMahon. I think that
no,
the influence is very clear, but I don't think that but controversial take, you ready for this one, Mike?
why not?
You can, along in our little, like, artistic Mount Rushmore that you just listed off here, I would say that both Bisley and Sienkiewicz are people that, like, their influence it's almost a parasocial thing where there were
Mm,
all of these artists that also had incredible careers, put out some great work, but they were just directly trying to do those guys. And I think that McMahon is the one, that you can kind of hold up as no one else can really do this. This is very strictly
yeah,
who he is as a creator.
yeah. Interestingly as well, I think considering that McMahon was brought into 2000 AD at the beginning to mimic Carlos Esquerra's style, very quickly established his own.
Yeah,
Um, but both him and Esquerra are these two incredibly influential artists who I I mean there's going to be pedants listening to this who go, "It's something can't be too unique," but are unique to the point where they can be an influence, but they can't be copied.
exactly, yes. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, there you go. Um, and it just because one thing I do want to talk about is the musical number because this is something we picked up on in last week's episode about John and Alan's addiction to musical numbers in comics, which
They love to sing. They
lots
have a song for the world.
they do. And and it's used in that contrasting way, where the words are saying one thing, but then the visuals are saying another.
Mhm.
And it, I I always struggled because I didn't necessarily know what song was being referenced
Yeah.
or what the tune was meant to be. Couldn't necessarily, sing it in my head, but the songs in uh, The Last American are like you're running the dial on a radio,
Yep.
and you're getting snatches of individual songs as they come up, and it's that contrast. It's making again, using culture
Yeah,
to contrast with
it's
reality.
yeah, and it's trying to, again, it's trying to add that moment of brightness, that moment of levity, and in turn only makes it seem that much darker.
Yeah, yeah. I do want to talk. I do want to talk about a bit more about what it means to read something like this right now, where we are facing epochal climate change. We are, whether people want to argue about it in the comments or not, we are entering um, the final phase of a new fascism
Mhm.
in Western politics, um, that comes with as much tub thumping nationalism as there was in the 1980s. Um, and so it's as we've already said, it's an incredibly challenging read
Mhm.
right now because it's asking us to do the one thing that feels pointless, which
Mhm.
is have a little hope
Yeah.
about the future. Not because someone's going to come and deliver you from that, because no one's coming to deliver Ulysses Pilgrim
Yeah.
because he's alone. But that doesn't mean that there isn't some form of light or some form of hope. And to pick up on a comment we made last week, is the bit at the end when he tries the Zippo lighter of the woman in the cave, and it just says, you know, uh, hope or twilight,
Yeah.
because it's like there's always light at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes it's an oncoming train.
Mhm.
um, but that's a remarkably challenging but nuanced and actually really rewarding way of considering hope, not as a fool's hope, not as, sticking your head in the sand and hoping that things will work out, but actually, what is the reality? Well, eh, you're alive.
Well, it's hope as action.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah,
And I think
absolutely.
that's something to definitely take out of it reading it right now, which is, nobody's gonna come and save you. Things aren't automatically, instantly going to get better, but
Mm,
the idea of even bothering in the slightest way, even, like, in a lonely, fatalistic mindset,
mm,
like, even bothering to take the action to try is an act of hope.
mm.
Like, you do not have to feel the hope, you have to act on it, and that's like, that's
Yeah. And there's that moment right at the beginning when they first go out into the world, and Charlie finds an ant's nest,
Mhm.
and it's he says it's evidence of at least a basic food chain, several interesting mutations among them, and it's not that hey, fantastic, the world saved, there's ants, but it's even in this hell, there is still something basic. There is still something fundamental.
The
Life
small
is
one
still trying by its fingernails to hang on. You know?
the smallest thing has managed,
Yeah,
and so can you.
yeah, 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 yeah. Um, we could probably keep going for another. I know I say this
Yeah.
on a regular basis, but we could probably keep going for another hour. If you have been moved to try the Last American, apologies for the spoilers. If you are joining us having gone and got a copy, I hope you've enjoyed our chat through it. It's I wasn't expecting us to talk ourselves into reading The Last American or then actually doing the episode, because I've got as listeners know, I've got a habit of promising that we will talk about things and then not talking about them. But it's such a rewarding read. It's a challenging read, difficult read. But you get three of the greatest creators British comics has ever published. At a point in world history that has a lot to say about now, and it's just beautiful.
Yep.
The whole thing is breathtakingly, yeah, beautiful.
It
It's
is painfully remarkable.
yeah, yeah, and it's remarkable that it exists.
Yeah.
Because within, what was this, 88, 87, 88?
88, I think.
Right, within 18 months, 2 years, people were proclaiming the end of history because, we'd won.
Yeah.
Finally,
Woohoo!
Western democracy has won. And we now sit with the bitter harvest of that hubris
Yep.
in many ways.
This is an unfortunately timeless book, I think.
Yeah. Yay!
Yay!
I'm glad we're recording this on a Friday night because it means I can go and have a drink. But yeah, we'll return next week to something a little bit more lighthearted, hopefully.
With a surprise.
Is it?
Don't know what the surprise. Don't worry,
Right,
I don't
okay.
know what
I
the
was just
surprise is
I was
either.
like, really? Oh, that's really interesting. As if I am a passive passenger on the journey of In Orbit every Wednesday. Oh, really? What are we doing?
No, we're gonna keep trucking along with the
Yeah.
idea of like something that we have talked about that we said that we'll talk about.
We might talk
My
about the
God.
prog.
Oh.
I
When
did
does that happen?
I did enjoy the commenter on last week's episode where they were like, I'm always in suspense as to when they're going to get around to talking about the week's prog. So,
The person who said, like, I always take bets on when
yeah,
in the episode you'll start talking about the prog. I'm so sorry, guys.
we do talk about the prog. It's just sometimes we like to talk about other things as well. But we'll talk about the prog next week. There we go.
There you go.
That's my promise to you. And also because the Meg will be out next week as well, so we've got plenty to chew on. In the meantime, let us know what you think about The Last American, about how wonderful Mick McMahon is. Yeah, we shall see you in 7 days' time for more from the Galaxy's Greatest podcast, hopefully with a little bit more uplifting and cheery content. But until then, it's goodbye from me. It's goodbye from Chloe. Splendid Verthrig.
See you next week.
Get 2000 AD now. Get.
Well, thanks for joining us on In Orbit every Wednesday, Earthlets. Make sure you like and subscribe and go along to 2000 AD, where you'll be able to subscribe to 2000 AD and the Judge Dredd magazine. Sign up to our newsletter and you'll get hundreds of pages of free comics to download. And download the app for your Apple and Android devices. Now, don't forget, Earthlets, this is the 2000 AD universe. We just live in it.